Hi, it's Tiff, and I'm a transgender woman. Hear me roar. Meow. Okay, so check it out, guys. One of the things that I kind of looked into when I was doing those religious studies at that university many years ago, and bear in mind, this is like 20 years ago. It's way before I transitioned. I was a grumpy, unhappy young man at the time. And the fact of the matter is, I read quite a bit into the idea of, they use different words, but essentially there is a concept that people who are androgynous, or what we would call trans now, or whatever terms you want to use, because terms go in and out of fashion. But the fact is, there's an idea, there's a notion, and especially in native religions, tribal type religions, traditional cultures, that people who are androgynous or trans essentially are somehow more sensitive to the spiritual, to the supernatural, that we have an insight into things. Shamans of tribes, of like some Native American tribes, I've read about shamans who were essentially somebody like me, who came across as masculine, feminine, all mixed up or whatever, but that was part of the mystique. That's part of the appeal. Now think about this. Think about rock stars, okay? Like those white guys, with the long hair, the guitar rocker dudes. Many of them are very androgynous and feminine looking. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and all the rock star guys that I listened to at the time and saw on MTV, they kind of look like women. And I just thought that was kind of funny. I didn't really talk about it, of course, because even back then I was thinking about this stuff, even as a teenager. But it's not the kind of discussion you have with your buddies when you're hanging out with the other guys on the wrestling team back in 1987. You don't really go, "Hey guys, did you ever notice that a lot of shamans in tribal religions are..." It's not the kind of conversation I ever had with anybody. I kept that sort of thing to myself because I was too busy trying to be a guy. Sports and then the military and all that bullshit. But the fact of the matter is, take a good look at somebody like, I don't know, Axl Rose, if you know who that is, or who's the guy from Motley Crue, Vince Neil, all these other type rocker guys, these 80s guys. They don't really age the way they meant to, I don't think. Some of them don't really age in a cool way that they're comfortable with. I'll give you an example. I saw a meme the other day on Pinterest. It was a picture of Axl Rose sitting next to another one of those rock star 80s guys, right? And it was a pretty recent photo. And somebody had captioned it, how did these rocker guys turn into into a middle-aged lesbian couple who runs a bookshop in Portland? And it was that kind of a joke. It wasn't really hateful, I don't think. It was just more of a little, I don't know, a little kind of thing, It's not really, I didn't take offense to it when I read it, and I kind of thought about it, and I go, they kind of do look like ladies. Seriously. These men that would sing in the high C range, "Sweet Child of Mine," that kind of crap. Take a good look at these fellas when they were young and look at them now. The ones who haven't gotten haircuts and grown beards, like the Metallica guys, for example, they're not really aging like old men. They're looking more like someone like me. That's true. And I always find it funny that those, at that time, in the 80s in particular, with the hair metal craze and that kind of music at the time that was so popular, the culture of it was to be an extremely macho young man who looks like a chick, yet gets all the girls. And he's not a FAG, because that was like the worst thing a young guy could call another guy back in the 80s. Which makes it hard for me to watch some old movies like Teen Wolf 2. I'm like, that's not funny. But at the time, I was caught up in it too, because what choice did I have? It sucked. But that's in the past. But just think about this, guys. The kind of person that can go onto a stage and belt out a high-pitched song up in the high C and hitting all those sweet notes and moving all those people to strong emotion is a slender young man dancing all serpentine on the stage with his long hair, tattoos, and jewelry. Sexy guys, but they really did look like chicks, most of them. But you weren't allowed to say that at the time. And I just found that hilarious that this crew of dorks that I hung out with at the time on the wrestling team and stuff, a bunch of guys with crew cuts and stuff. You ever seen The Breakfast Club? Okay, so you remember Sporto, like Emilio Estevez's character? Can you imagine him hanging out in the locker room with the wrestling team guys and talking about this sort of stuff? You sure as shit can't. You can't be like, hey, did you ever notice that the singer from that band is actually kind of hot and would make a cute girl? No, you can't say that. I couldn't back then. I wasn't able to get away with that, even if I thought it, which I did. Interesting. Yet at the same time, there were morons like Andrew Dice Clay, I think was one of them, a few others, who made a point of bashing on celebrities, musicians like Boy George. And I'm not talking about all the trouble he got into since then. I'm talking about insecure teen males, like I was at the time, not seeing the irony or the contradiction of listening to Motley Crue or Guns N' Roses or whatever, a bunch of guys that look like girls rocking out and singing in high voices and wearing tight pants and all that stuff, makeup even, and saying that that's macho, that that's cool, but if you listen to Boy George or Prince or whatever, you are, well, you know the words. Yeah. What sense does that make? It didn't, and it's still, there's a lot of contradictions like that are just obvious, but people don't talk about them, and they just don't want to hear it, even if you do talk about it. But that's something interesting to me. But there is a power to being androgynous or feminine that someone who's like a tea bag soaking in a cup of testosterone, like unfortunately I was at that time, I don't think they're really as capable of picking up on some things. The deeper I get into my transition and the older I get, the more I am coming back to sensations, maybe abilities, you could use that word, that I had as a youngster. And I mean a little kid. Things you might want to call psychic, paranormal experiences. I'm going to make a bunch of videos about that kind of stuff because I've had a lot of interesting experiences in my family stories, things like that, things I have seen. But just think about the idea of, do you guys, if anybody's still with me and you're actually not just writing mean comments because I'm trans, and you're actually listening or thinking about the stuff I'm talking about, do you guys, whoever you are watching me right now, did you ever think about that? That people who are shamanistic, people who are charismatic, people who tap into the divine. Now, don't get me wrong, I love music. I didn't mean to trash on the music of that era, the stuff I grew up with, because I still love it. I just think that most of the men who are able to stand on a stage and sing into that microphone and make people feel incredibly strong emotions, good, bad, whatever, there's something essentially feminine about the ability to do that, I think. But then again, look at a band like Pantera. I don't know. I'm just saying, maybe I'm not talking about heavy metal or thrash metal so much. I'm talking about like the pop glam metal, the little bit more mainstream hard rock metal type music at the time. And we would say hair today, gone tomorrow was the joke. And it was true, of course. But yeah, and then came the Seattle scene, and guess what? A lot of those fellas were really feminine too, or really androgynous. So, and I don't know if it was all like that weird, ironic, inside out contradiction that nobody wanted to talk about. I sense that it came probably, if you think about it like in a cultural, socio-cultural, historical sort of way, from the 1960s. I think what I was experiencing in the 80s and observing around me was the direct result of hippies or yippies or liberal, progressive, democratic young men growing their hair long and in the 60s and getting the backlash from MAGA type people at that time who told them, you look like a girl, I can't tell if you're a boy or a girl, and they would attack their masculinity. So I think maybe the fact that you weren't allowed to say that a heavy metal singer in 1989 looks like a chick and sounds like one and dresses like one, but you're tough guys, young men with buzz cuts would rock out in their audience, Beavis and Butthead type guys. You can't point out these things to people like that. But does anyone else have any thoughts on this stuff? I'm just interested in talking about things like that. What I'm not interested in is having to defend myself for being transgender every time I go online. So, but let's talk. If you're watching this video and you don't know why, and you're still looking at me and you're trying to figure out what you're looking at and what you're listening to, you're still watching for a reason. Let's be friends. Drop me a comment. Let's talk. All right? So yeah, I just threw a bunch of stuff out there, but it seems like some of these videos are starting to get some traction, and I'm having a little fun with this. So you know what? That's what's on my mind right now. I made 2 videos today. I'll make another one tomorrow. But hey, thanks for watching if you're still with me. All right? And essentially, life is good. Things are bad right now. It's horrible politically and all that, but don't lose hope. The spiritual, the divine, the transcendence of hitting a high note and or a sweet melody or an awesome hook, in music. I really think that stuff has a directly androgynous or feminine sort of like fuel or like do you know what like a supercharger is on an old piston engine? You just spray some water or into the mix and it just flares up and it's much more powerful. That's what androgyny and femininity bring to musical expression that tries to be masculine. The best of it is essentially androgynous or feminine, I think. There's some kind of a spirit that is tapped into. And I'm not sure somebody who is... Well, you know what? What are your thoughts? If you have any, drop them down below, please. Let me know. Let's talk. Bye. Thanks for watching, okay? And have an awesome day. But if you're MAGA, go fuck yourself, okay? But everybody else, thanks. Bye.